Hey everyone, Ian's 20, and I'm back. Yay. So I've been wanting to make this video for a while, real talk. Of course, I also want to get even realer talk that I had already recorded this video. And then the computer decided to turn off and I lost everything. Yay. So I'll be taking more regular breaks to make sure this thing doesn't break down and take everything from me again. Oops. Oh, I thought that could have answered some questions better anyway, so we'll go again. So, yay. I hope I can give... That's what my aim will be, to answer, not really questions, but concerns, I guess? I don't know what to call them. Observe observations. We'll begin. So I really want to get to talking about Skells Love 12 again, because that was a lot of fun. But, of course, I have two other smaller reviews in the way first. Quote-unquote, in the way. The first was left by Null No More on Ordinary Day. And he or she says, "Now I'm really worried, because if this is what happens when Alexa's on the trip, woe betide the entire planet if she doesn't return, if she ever doesn't return. I like the repeated napping and the hints that time wasn't as it should be. They didn't spoil the end, but they gave enough of a weird vibe so that I was on edge even in the land of happy. Happy. It's a good place to be. Ricky's there. Usually I get irritated by stories where the entire cast happens to show up to play with the central character. It reduces the importance of the rest in service of the main character to my taste, but this story faintly acknowledges this artificiality, making it build up the weird. Mind you, I've been guilty of this tactic because boy howdy is it ever fun to play with." True. That's been one of my enjoying factors, I guess, to writing Skells Love. It's like, oh, what character can I introduce now for Janix to interact with? And that kind of stuff. That was all Hello Xenos was about. Granted, it was less about everybody coming to meet her and her going to meet everyone, meeting them on their turf and stuff. But yeah, I understand that about that, and it was meant to be weird because it's like if Janix was ever to sit down and go like, wait a minute, something's wrong, that would cue Doug showing up out of nowhere to be like, nothing's wrong, you know, basically like that, even though clearly things are wrong. Yeah, I made sure to include all the napping because I realized in putting this fic together that would help a lot, especially when you find out how it ends. And as for Alexa never returning, that's what the Bloodstained Corporal was all about. Safe to say, people die. Janix goes crazy. She kills everybody. It's nice. But seriously, yeah, just don't take away Janix's hook, her anchor. She needs it. And if you do, bad things. And next is a guest review left on Skells Love Chapter 11, Alarm, which says, "Good story. I'm waiting for Chapter 12, but there are some stuff you didn't make clear. The first one is Elma using her mim or her real body? This is the first thing. Plus, I only started reading your story starting from how they found Janix, so I'm guessing from Janix, because that's where they found Janix. And I had this question in my mind for quite a while. Who is that woman, and why won't Janix talk about her? Plus, I noticed that she sort of snapped at Elma when she was about to mention that woman, but I guess she's the one who caused 90% of Janix's mental breakdown." So, to answer that question about the Emma using her mim and her real body, I had that whole conversation before with another guy, and by another guy I mean Rex, who I have like 80% of my conversations with. I enjoy them all though. And yeah, it's hard to say. It's like at this point I think it would be better to just have the chapter start, and then it's like a circle means Elma and X means mim. So, then you start the chapter, and at the top of the chapter it's just an O or an X, because like I don't know. The only time that I've ever specified was obviously for the last chapter, Hello Xenos, and then for another chapter earlier in Skells Love where the group is talking in the barracks, and that's it. Granted, there'll be times coming up when I specify I'll be more able about it. If anything, I'll specify when she's in her real body, since that would be since you see her in her mim more often than not, because let's be real, I think it's more effective to traverse Mira in a mim. Unless you're L, or it's Celica, apparently. Anyway, as for the woman, that was answered, finally, in chapters 12 and 13, so go ahead and read those, and you'll have your answers. But yeah, you're right, that she's probably a big source of Janix's issues, so to speak. So yeah, thank you, guest, who left your review on December 19th. Wait, really? Oh yeah, right, because 4 months. I was like, no way. I had to have done a video on this. Okay, stupid me. Alright then. Rexor888 left a huge review on Chapter 12. So huge, it's actually in 2 reviews. Real talk though, since you're... I guess it doesn't matter if you're anonymous or not. Does it tell you what the character limit is? Because as we've discovered from one of Rexor's other huge reviews, there is a character limit apparently for reviews on fanfiction, in which case, what is it? Anyway, I better be safe than sorry. So we begin. Chapter 12, Mission. Giant Review. Nice to see Vandom returning to engineering during this time. It makes sense as Blade becomes more streamlined over time that his roles as commander aren't as critical, and probably taken in share by HB at this point. HB is pretty trusted, as I've shown in some scenes. I mean, if Nagi can spend time gallivanting around Mira with Cruz's team, can't see why Vandom can't take on some grease work. He certainly seems so into that kind of work during 2Ps in a pod and talks with NPCs in the hangars regarding him. Yes. If anything, I think the game, there's actually a small canon conversation that they have at some point where they're kind of happy that once the Life Ultra Clan is all over, he can go back to just being, you know, chief engineer and not having to worry about running Blade. But yeah, so for most of my stories, he's not as involved in Blade now because the big thing, the Life Ult, is gone. Is back, so this is the only other thing that he'd better be really super invested in to have to be a part of the gangland. It should be interesting to see the Rothians on a more unified offensive front. Every time they've been in action in-game, it's always been tactical concentrated strikes with just a handful of soldiers, or even just one loner, or full-on defense in one case. When I last read that part, I went on a huge tangent, answering a bunch of other parts to come in, or talking about a bunch of other things brought up in this review. I will summarize them all right now and hit them up better as we go along. That I was lazy. That's the answer. Like, I know that seems weird as the answer to this, but the thing about it is that I read, when I was reading the review, the first time that I got it in my email, I read that part, and in my head, the first thing I thought was, I hope you weren't too disappointed. You know, we'll get onto that when we got onto that. And now it dawns on our resident Skelehead. Yes, all it took was Janix quoting back what Alexa told her in Chapter 1, and she understood. It looks like our little level 11 tyrant has grown up. To think all the times I killed him for squad tasks. I didn't even know Langle the alien payload was a squad task target. The reason I chose Langle actually was simply because of his name. I wanted a prone tyrant, and there's only 3. There's a female prone tyrant, him, and Dadan, and I was not going to use Dadan, and honestly, his name is cool. Like, I mean, just think about how he fights in the chapter with gigantic gun and the hammer. Alien payload. I gave him an alien payload. I made him an alien payload, so I thought that was really cool. So the name is really what did it for me. Well, that explains why Nargi's not in the head count. Wonder if she, like the Dawn, is liable to make a surprise third-party appearance. Well, not here, obviously. But yeah, I don't. So back when we were talking about what happened in Mission, and you were talking about how maybe the Dawn could show up, I really wanted that to happen, but I'm like, nah, he'd be too distracting from what really matters about the chapter. But because this all came to be, Badul's Remnants, all of a sudden I had reason to use some of the other elements in-game and give them importance. And so I figured that the Dawn, Nahum, and Levael would be more interesting now with this new headcanon given to them for this universe. So I won't write them off entirely, but we'll get back to them. Maybe they'll pop up someday. Wow, Ethos is just leaving Battle's unit to die out there. No reinforcements, no tournaments, apart from the soon-to-be procured Levael. Do they have a single Zern in their name? I do want to ask. I think from the rest of the review I can gather that you do get it, but when I read this originally I thought, does he not get it? No offense, I'm just... because the Terminus and Levael are the same thing. And just that line makes it seem like you think they're two different things. That's all I'm saying. But regardless, the more important thing about this, not that, is Ethos. Yeah, he left them to die, and I realized after I finished the chapter that that was stupid. His reaction to their base being attacked should have been to immediately go save them. Because as you find out in the ending, they have something very important that he wants, and so yeah. But I guess you could hand-wave all that as Ethos is a terrible leader. Which, if there's anything that we've learned from the Ganglion, is that their leader was terrible. Stealth Zigs, there's a scary thought. Although with how good their detection skills are in general, at least they weren't the ones to get first blood this time around. Yeah. And so I like imagining that moment where Jenkins, I think it is, notices the Zig and the Zig notices Jenkins is just like in super slow-mo. And it's like they both like actually know that the other is there. And it just so happens that Jenkins has a slightly quicker trigger finger for that moment. I know it's how it's presented, but I'm not sure if Badul's behavior is really all that abnormal. Milsali in general are sadists and live for the hunt, at least last I checked. So I see him getting excited for this confrontation. So to see him getting excited for this conversation despite the odds seems almost me. Yeah, I had a whole talk about this. It's all based on the enemy index of all things. But the really weird thing is that I thought, I guess it's not that weird, but I thought that Milsadi had issues, not issues, but like that they didn't, emotions weren't a thing to them. But upon reading the enemy index, the only thing that's not a thing to them is pain. They have the ability to turn off, to not feel pain. They can do that, with the exception of Badul, because he was previously harmed and it kind of threw off some of his functions, which is why he can feel pain and also experience emotions. But I guess because they're never shut off from emotions, actually made writing them easier because they could laugh and chuckle and grin and do things like that. So it's more fun to play with and get angry and all that stuff. But Badul's case, what makes him so odd is that he does it too much. He's too happy, too excited, too energetic, too angry, you know, and all those kinds of things. And it's like Chantai's like, that's not how Masadi acts, but that's how he acts because he was thrown off. So that was the main thing I wanted to show. But you're probably right. I mean, I only read the enemy index for them twice, and it was a while back. So, whoops-a-daisy, if that was a mistake on my part. But I guess what I was trying to present more was that it's just he's more invested than Nosadi normally are, I guess. If that makes sense. It's fights like Nagi's where I really wish that virus would affect Ziggs. It's already hilarious how almost every ganglion mechanoid save satyrs and shrabs gets horrendously crippled without long-range attacks, and it could have been a big hope moment too. I don't know what virus does actually, sorry, I'm not too familiar with all the abilities in game, there's a lot. And to be honest, once again, this is where part of the lazy comes in from. With the exception of a few arts that were specifically called out by name, a lot of the characters didn't actually function with unique abilities and all that kind of stuff. And it sucks because they have arts in game, but I didn't read up the arts for this chapter, so a lot of people were just stuck using their weapons as you would use a weapon, with occasionally doing some really flashy stuff that may or may not be an art. And so I wanted to do more with Hope, but I just didn't know what to do with her. Because, like, from a gameplay perspective, of course you can make a build that will allow you to use a knife to kill a Millosaur. Somehow you can stab with a knife this big and kill a creature that's gigantic. Because, of course you can. It's a video game. But writing that in a fanfic is really hard to get that across, you know? Like, I'm not, like, if I was ever to write a fight against a Millosaur, how would they kill it? You know, it would take a lot of effort, unless they're in their Skells, in which case it's a bit more understandable with their crazy weapons. On foot, though, it's like, you know, so in Hope's case, she only ever used the knife to buff. The characters rarely use the knives, who have knives, rarely use them to actually fight, because I don't know how that would really help. Again, I did have Hope using it to sever the connectors in the back of the necks for some pugs, disabling them, so I guess that works. All that's to say, I just kind of wish I used the other characters more, but I didn't want to look up the game. I didn't want to turn on the game and read everybody's arts, or even go to the Xenoblade X wiki. I didn't want to, I was lazy. Which also applies to this next statement. I know there's a lot going to narrate, but I would have liked to see some Skell descriptions, otherwise I'm just assuming they're piloting Formula Zero Skells. Yeah, sorry. Really sorry about that. I realized I didn't think it'd be such an issue, from writing perspective, and also I was lazy. I realized later, after I finished the chapter, that what I could have done, once again, was turn on Xenoblade and go to the store. All the Skell frames are there, and they're already equipped with weapons. So I can just take the stock versions of them and write them down and use them for some of the characters. It would have been so easy. So I just blame my laziness. I will say this, though. Doug and Bose were in heavy Skells the whole time. Gwyn was in a medium, Irina was in a light. Alexa was in a heavy, and then when Irina returned to save Janix, she was in a light. A heavy. And that's the only specifications I got. Drones, huh? Not a bad choice, Alexa. I would have liked to give her the Drone Storm, because I think that sounded cooler, but I don't actually know what the Drone Storm does. I've only ever used 2 super weapons in-game, and that was the EM Zenith Cannon and the Hex Triad Particle Cannon, that thing. I wish I could see Elle dance about in combat. That was fun to write. And Jenkins was like, what the fuck? So that was fun. Not the same weakling prone tyrant anymore. If only the fight against him in-game were that intense. I had too much fun writing Langol's fight. That was a blast. Just the Gatling gun, the flamethrower, the laser, and the spreader missiles, or whatever you call them. Fun shit. Seems to be the appropriate response to taking a missile volley to your mechs everywhere. I think that was in reference to Alexa getting hit by missiles and then returning it on someone else pissed off because they did that to her, and yeah. If it's for something else, you're probably right. Over the top. I find it funny how, given his few appearances thus far, Janix has had more of a sailor's mouth than Vandam has in your fic. Yeah. I mean, I guess I was just about to say that, well, he's in a really professional, important position right now, leading this final battle, but at the same time, he's Vandam, so he should curse more. So I guess, yeah. Since we're told what attribute Janix's longsword is, do we know if it's Orphean or Receding Rust? I had a very huge detailed answer for this last time around. Try to give the nutshell version. In-game, Janix wields a Receding Rust. In RPs that I do on the Discord, she has a Receding Rust, I'm 99% sure. Or at least a sword of that type. The glaives, or whatever they're called, you know? But the first sword I ever imagined being Janix's sword was the big 6-star swords, like the Unbreakable sword, those really robust ones, because for Janix is... she's muscular, she's extremely strong, so I think that a gigantic sword like that would be her type. Granted, when she's found, she has a sword with her, but there's no way it can be a 6-star sword since you don't get access to those until you're on Mira. So what she had was just the same sword Gwyn had. And so I would imagine that the longsword she's using now is her Ether longsword given to her by Alexa. And basically I just imagine the basic longsword that Gwyn has, that one, but like maybe a bit more shaping to it around the body of the blade, and then it's all surrounded in an ether. There's like ether light surrounding the outside of it. It's concentrated ether. So the attacks are cuts and slashes, but they're also like ether burns and stuff like that. So she's wielding a Fanon weapon in the fic, but I guess the closest thing to the most accurate thing she'd probably wield more often than not is the Receding Rust, even though I like the idea of her sword being big, as opposed to just a normal, no offense, dinky sword, if you know what I mean. Also, I don't know what the Orphean ones look like. I should look them up. I'm pretty sure I've seen them before. Slavi's here, and her English has improved. The Rexoskells here. Yeah. You keep saying that, and to be honest, I don't actually know. I'm not too good at writing prone dialogue. I'm not entirely sure how they speak. Like, I couldn't tell you right now. I couldn't imitate a prone for one line of dialogue, even though I should be able to. I really don't know. Sorry for that. Like, I know you're not saying anything. It's more like for me, myself. I just... Like, is that a bad thing that I improved her English? Or... I should listen to her. I should talk to her in-game. I should do a lot of things in-game, and I just can't be bothered to pop the game in and check it out. So, once again, that's another thing that just permeates through, like, everything that I write. I don't think it's terrible, but I wish that that wasn't the case. And I reused the Rexoskel simply because in my head, it didn't blow up. It wasn't destroyed following the end of the Definian Downfall mission, so it's like I could totally use it. Again, that'd be awesome. And it could give... the main reason I was so excited to use it is because it could give the Skells something to do. Instead of just having them fight generic enemies or ignore them, I could toss up the Rexoskell up there and do an awesome battle. So, thank you, Rexoskell, for being so hardy. Moving on. A little late to bring this up, but while I'm pretty confident that Hama is your own creation, it's been nagging me that Urdu seems like it too. But part of me wants to say that she was actually in the game. That part tells me that she was the Black Skell pilot in the Corwin missions. But I know that's not true. Yeah, you know, I always felt those were weird missions until I realized that they just have centralized enemies for some of the ARC missions that usually take 2 or 3 times. I think 2, actually. But no. Actually, all the enemies in the story except for Ethos, Hadam, and Zornum are from the game. So Langle, Chantai, Badul, Ahama, and Urdu are all from the game. Same for Dadan, Nardakion, and Nahum, but of course they are. Those are super bosses all in their own respect. But yeah, I literally went to the Xeno Wiki because, once again, like I said, I lost the 2 tyrants I made for this chapter, and in retrospect, 2 was not enough. But at the same time, at the time, for the original version of the chapter, I didn't want too many enemies, because it's like, oh, I gotta make them up and then just kill them off. But it was a lot easier, so I went to the wiki and looked up each of the sections. I looked at the tyrant section, and I'm like, okay, these are the prone tyrants, I'll take one of these. These are the Marnik tyrants, I'll take one of these. It's generally how I went. I chose 2 Mosadi because I love Mosadi. That easy. Simple reason. But yeah, they're all from the game, and also I learned, actually, from the Xeno Wiki that they all have Skells as well, except for Langle. Ahama has a Satyr. Badul has a Satyr. Chantai has a Galder, and Urdu has a Kumova. So I always thought that. So I thought that was pretty cool. Very handy too for the breakdown coming. Gwyn would be the first one to have to resort to on foot. Always seemed to be the case for me, in that he'd either get too literal with his feel or he'd just get shot down. Yeah, Gwyn, he's ever the, what's the word? You know, he's the one that charges ahead. I think that's what it says in his description when it comes up in the game after you recruit him. That's just his style. He just goes in, leaves everyone in his wake, like behind him, just so sounds like something he'd do. I wonder if there's a bitter taste in Cruise Map when he uses Afterburner. I mean, it's a good art, one of, if not the best sniper arts, but I was wondering what you meant about that. I thought you didn't like Afterburner, and you were taking personal offense to it or something. Honestly, that's literally what I thought at first, and I'm like, no, there's more to it than that. I kept reading it, and I'm like, what am I missing? And I blanked it out of my memory that it's one of the arts you get from Lao. I forget what the other one is. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that is true. I didn't know that. Regardless, once again, I actually don't know if I said this time or last time I recorded, but I had someone with dual guns using 0-0. If I'm repeating this, I'm sorry. And I realized that, wait, the only people who can use 0-0 are Celica and Cross. But then I said, fuck it, if you have dual guns, you can use 0-0. So it applies here too. If you have a sniper rifle, you have access to Afterburner ammo. So on and so on. And I had what's her name? Sorry, I'm scrambled. I had Janix, I just did something. I had Janix use a assault rifle art that was really cool. I forget what it's called though. It's like quick shot or something like that? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know what to say about that if he does. Maybe he does, but you know, useful tool is a useful tool. Wonderful. So now Langle thinks he's Tartarus from Halo. I once again, I don't know if I said this the first time or during the re-record, but that was like the hammer, gravity hammer was what I was thinking of every time when I originally envisioned that it was a hammer that he had stacked away in his back. Gravity hammer. Looks like Badul's unit has been fed to the lions. Ta-da! Yeah, poor bastards. It's nice to see that even Alexa cares about how the enemy skills are treated. Yeah, after reading that comment of yours for Phantom, where you said it's like strange that I don't remember what the words you used with, but that she didn't really show her skill nut tendencies in that story much. I'm like, I need to use it a bit more. It's just I know things are getting serious and it's like getting very dire and sad things are happening, but I want to appeal to the fact that she is a skill nut, so I put that in there, and I'm glad you liked it because I thought it was a funny line too, or at least an entertaining line. And that's how Langle died, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Yeah, yeah. Part of me wanted him to die in the explosion, but I just like the idea of murderers coming in and stealing a kill. And being like, I get paid more for this, right? I thought that unnamed ganglion base was too anticlimactic of a front for the final showdown. I should have given it a name, just because. And I was like, well, it's not a permanent fixture. It's part of the warship that's detached and then drills into the land, so it doesn't really have a name. It's more like just warship mining unit, I guess. But I think for future reference, since it's going to be a recurring thing, I should give it a name. Some sort of name. Remnant land? Land where remnants are from? Yeah, a surprise satyr would put a damper on anyone's day, crippling phobia or not. That's another thing that I like about the changes that I made to this chapter, is the fact that since Ahama does have a satyr, he can just call it in, and unknown to him, he just trump card. That's not what he meant. He was going to use it to run away since he was in such bad shape. I know it would have been redundant, but I always wish that Elma's had Ghostwalker on top of Ghost Factory. I was confused once again because I'm like, she does have both those arts, right? But I guess... Or is it Shadowrunner, the other one she has? Doesn't she have Ghostwalker and Ghost Factory? Could have sworn I remember putting them both on her and being like, well, one's for one person, one's for the whole team. The one for the whole team is more effective. I guess since once again, video game segregation is, you don't need an 8 art palette. They can use whatever arts they have. Much as I hate to say it, there goes half of Team Expendable. Yeah. Herman and Tyler, it's fine. I didn't spend as much time with them as I did with Bills, and even then, I didn't spend that much time with Bills either. Got what looks to be the first type of the chapter. Looking to Bills, yeah. Gabuid saw a deep cut along her back. I honestly did not catch that, and I reread this chapter more times than I should reread a 35k chapter. I'm surprised that's the only thing you caught. Whether it's the only one or not, I don't know, but I really hope it is, because that's impressive. Because for me, like tooting my own horn for once, that I got through 35k with not too many errors. Pretty sure Bill's suffering, not Gabuid. You're right, sorry. Fixed it. Actually, as soon as I read this, I went and fixed it on here, Archive and Tumblr. That was fun. You haven't played many Warriors games, have you, Ethos? Because you never discount the enemy commanders simply because they have no soldiers under them, and you've many. This is true. Oh, great. So now not only is Badul a sadist by race, but he's also got masochism hardwired into him. Gotta make him worse. He leads the remnants for a reason. Gabuid picked up pretty fast on Janix's trigger, considering all that's been transporting around them. And not ever witnessing it herself before. Yeah, you know, on reading that, I think I should change around Gabuid and Elma's dialogue somehow. Ultimately, that actually was never there, because in my thoughts, when Elma went to save Janix at the end of the chapter, her skull was parked like right off in the distance. Actually, no, she didn't even have her skull with her. She went to her on foot. She wasn't even in her skull at any point, but I brought in the Ares 90 because she needed it. But, like, because when Janix was having her breakdown, Elma would get on her commute and be like, Doug, bring my skull here now. And then he'd roll it up, and then she'd jump in it. That was the original version of how it went since she didn't have her skull. But since she did, I had to find a reason not to have it nearby, until I realized that in Janix's stupor, she wouldn't even really notice it. Especially once she starts attacking Elma. She won't care. There's a Skell over there. She wants to kill her. So, you know. So yeah, I think that there could be a smoother way to do that that's not too strange. But I think I'll just leave it the way it is. Friggin' Leviel. As if robbing the saddleless drones off the Vito wasn't bad enough. $10 says Badul's remnants hand, however you're gonna... however you will, is going to enlist an Argy at some point. Probably. Yeah, Badul's remnants. Badul's hand sounds cool. Is that a reference to Star Wars? Or something else? No, Star Wars is Vader's fist, I think. What the 501st becomes. And the Mystery Thinkings. Whatever it was that was issued seemed like another thing to add on to the ever-growing stack of Elma's secrets. One that really seems to be eating her up this time. Yeah, I mean, hell... like, I don't even know. That scene I've had in my head for forever. Elma forcing herself to stand there and listen to Janix undergo surgery for who knows how long, maybe a minute before she finally convinced herself, before she found herself able to leave and not have to listen to that anymore. But it's like, you have to ask, was she right in letting Janix remain awake because she asked her to, despite all the pain that she'll be in? Or should she have put her to sleep? You know, I don't really think there's a right answer there. And I don't even think Elma thinks there is either. This really was worth the wait. Glad. The tension, the drama, the twist, the foreshadowing. My one big complaint is that while not as bad, every allied Xeno not named Gabuid, and to a lesser extent Celica and Rock, says they don't really have much screen time implied or actual anyways. And L, since most of the name blades fell out of the action at some point to give more focus to the main groups, right? Still seems like an afterthought. We're told that there are various prone fighting against the gangland, but we're also never told of their battles or how many died. Slavity pops up a few times, but we only see her kill the one prone, and the other parts with her feel like you could have written a generic Blade Scout in her place. Yeah, well, the intention wasn't to force... I wasn't forcing them in there to put them in as part of the action. I wrote those scenes in there because I was using them because they were in battle, you know, and to fulfill their role, which Slavity's task was to take the other cliff opposite of Gabweed's. It's just that whereas with Gabweed and her team, you saw them as they took it, when it smash cut to Slavity, she took out the last guy and they just finished. And that was really it. Even Gajarg's grand entrance and Gabweed's shadows are more or less forgotten at some point as the action, which was really enticing, by the way. I actually didn't read that before. How did I miss that? Thank you. And not in the sense that the other blades are forgotten or not mentioned to give way to the main focus, if that makes sense. The various divisions are still referenced, but Gabweed's shadows stop being mentioned, not even covering the retreat, and so do the Kaladars, I feel. And on a more personal hope, I was kind of hoping to see the 2 remaining 100 Hellion warriors in action, as well as the 3 Talons and Gulata. Not sure what could have been done to add to the Kaladars, as their presence was felt for a good deal after the reveal, but Gajarg could have at least warned the Skell division about Leviel, albeit too late. I feel like he would have known about its existence being one of Luxar's officers. That said, your awareness of them is getting better, and I really like the various dialogues between gangland officials. Hope to see Chapter 13 in time. And then 6 days later, there it was. So, I answered this in my original take, and then I skipped out on it because it was a huge tangent. I didn't see any reason to include a Gajarg action scene. I was considering it for the longest time of putting it in there after he comes in to just show a scene of him ripping through, like, I don't know, a few dozen prone or whatever, and then that would be it, just to show that he's here now. But I didn't see the point. I just like, at that point, the focus had already shifted to specifically Janix and Elma's teams, and maybe occasionally everybody in the sky. But I didn't think that there was a reason to have everybody else to cut to Gajarg's unit to show them come up, when I could just have the other people say that they're here now and fighting. Later on, I considered that maybe I could do that anyway, just to do it, and write Gajarg fighting, because, you know, why not? But then it's like, I don't know, I don't really see the point to it, and then I was done, and I submitted it, and I never bothered thinking about it anymore. I'm like, nah, who cares? And then when you wrote the comment, I'm like, well, I didn't see the point to it as I was reading it, but then I read that part where you said you were hoping to see the other Rothians, the other named Rothians, and it all clicked in place. I could have used them as well and made the scene longer. To be like, Gajarg's here, slash, and then the 3 Talons show up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's them. And then Gulata's Skell flies in overhead, and she starts taking some things out. And I'm like, that would have been perfect. That, once again, it's still just another action scene to put in there to show them coming, but now you get more out of it. Instead of just Gajarg being awesome, you get to see these other Rothians who you hopefully know at least a little bit from the game. And that was like, wow. It's like, if I had, after I read this, I was considering it. Even now, I'm still considering going back in and adding a scene like that. Like, because Gajarg comes in when Janix, I think, cuts off Ahama's hand, or he comes in at some point. You hear his big roar. So what I was thinking was, after he roared, and Janix would be like, "Oh, you're fucked now." Scene cut to the Gajarg scene, then scene cut back to Janix and Ahama before his satyr dropped in. So that would be where I would put it. Just one scene for him. But it sucks that you think it was an afterthought, because it wasn't. It was a first thought to put in a Slavity scene. Originally, I was not even going to do that. I didn't see any reason to have the scenes of the characters taking the cliffs and to use sniper positions. I figured, I said that they were going to do that, and then you'd think that they would do it, and then they would do it and it'd be done. But then I decided, no, you know what, I actually want to use Slavity a bit more, and maybe have her be the one who notices the Rexoskel. And then I want to have Gabweed. I wanted to do a cool Gabweed action scene, because I can't get enough of her being able to breathe fire. I think that's pretty awesome. And the Rothians as well fought a little bit. As for her shadows, which actually once again didn't notice this comment either, which I guess was her team that was with her when she took the cliff, she left them at the cliff, because they had to defend it. So, like, while the snipers are taking out, if anyone decided to try to take the cliff back, they would be there covering it. Gabweed was the only one who called her Skell in to join the Skell fight once the Rexoskell hopped in. Maybe others of them left after her, or maybe others just left to join the battle at large later on, but the main thing was that she took off on herself to take on the Rexoskell by herself, and then after that point she remained by herself for the rest of the mission. Should her shadows have followed? I guess probably, but once again, I wrote the scene a specific way, I wrote all the stuff a specific way, and it's one of these things. It's this combined with something that you say in the next review that leads me to be like, these are really good things in your reviews that I wish I knew before I even published the chapters, because now editing them across 3 websites really bugs me. And I have to do that when I fix typos, and adding scenes is a big thing. And it's like, this is why people have betas. Why they have someone who they hand off their story to in advance before they make it public, so they can read it, because you would read it and then you'd give me this feedback and I would know that, yeah, I can put a Gajarg scene in there because I can use Gulata and the Talons and everything and everyone else as well too. The downside of that is that because you would read the stories in advance, you wouldn't feel the need to review them since you already gave me your thoughts in beta form, and it gets sad because then I lose reviews. Not like I want a ton of reviews, I just mean that I lose a review to read for like a video like this. So it's a catch-22, I think, is the perfect phrase for it. Whereas like I think that would be a great idea. You know, at that point you've already read it, so what good would a review do? You know, if you were to read the finished version again after I publish it, right? Like from your perspective, I don't think there'd be any reason for you to review it. I could be wrong though. But once again, it's getting into a whole theoretical scenario. I don't have a beta. You're not my beta. But that kind of information would help before I publish the chapters, because it blows my mind that I didn't think about that way. So yeah, it definitely, even now I still think that I should have put a Gajarg scene in there originally, even if it was just a Gajarg by himself scene. Because then I realized that I don't think I'll ever get a chance to use him in the future. Fuck. You know, it's... Oh boy, man, that took a while. But, you know, those are the kinds of things that make these videos 40 minutes long. I hope that I'm interesting, at least, in what I'm saying. And there was a few other things I wanted to talk about missions as well before I get onto this last thing. Originally, the other soldiers in the respective divisions were a lot more involved. But they're just faceless soldiers, so I don't know exactly what I would have used for them. But the scene originally for Janix losing her mind was that her entire team, her, Bills, Herman, and Tyler, were just running with the rest of the division. They were fighting stuff, and then some Skells overhead decided to disengage and drop down and surround them, and Janix entered her blue screen of death, and everybody is like, what do we do? And she's not responding, like, what do we do? And then they start trying to fight by themselves, and they all get ripped apart, and Janix is on her own as everybody dies, and she runs away. And then it would smash cut to the end of the chapter, and Elma would find her, and that would be it. But with the addition of the bad guys, Elma will find her, call Doug, you know, all that. But with the addition of the bad guys, the change in how the fights go on, splitting the teams up, having the Blades winning from the get-go, it just made less sense for Janix's breakdown to cause her division, who's fighting a winning battle, to all of a sudden lose, even if they're not receiving orders from her. And Ethos was supposed to be in that little base where Badul's team is, with Zornim and the other guy, Hadam. Those were the only 2 generals that were supposed to be there alongside him. They were supposed to come out and fight and get killed in the battle, and then the fortress would be raided and Ethos would be killed. And that was it, and then it'd be done and over with. But a lot of changes, a lot of ideas altered it from how it was. Once again, originally just supposed to be a small scouting mission, then the battle, then the slightly bigger battle, and eventually got to this 35,000 word epic that it is. As it kept changing, and I had to move pieces around, I had to have Janix's breakdown make sense, and not just her breakdown, but everybody dying as a result of her breakdown had to make sense. And like I said, they were fighting a winning battle. They don't just all of a sudden lose because they lose their commander. Unless they're being ambushed and attacked from all sides and they're not sure how to respond, in which case that was more of a... Like I kept pointing it out. HB was in the same position, but because he was active, he was able to see what was happening and command his division. He still took a lot of losses, but he was able to save his division. Whereas because Janix was indisposed, no one knew what to do. And even with the Rothians there, they fell apart and everybody died. And it was all Janix's fault. Basically, you could trace it to her and all that stuff. So, why am I saying this? Oh, right, I'm saying this simply because I want to give you a little bit more insight into Chapter 12 and how it was originally and all the things that changed. Another thing that was originally going to happen is that the warship wasn't going to come to try to save the base. A bunch of Zerns were going to come, and the Zenith Cannon Regiment was going to start destroying the Zerns one by one. So did something originally escape the battle? I think something did escape the battle. The warship, the big warship was going to come and drop off the Zerns, I think it was, and then the warship would they would target it, try to destroy it like they did here, but a Zern would get in the way and they'd destroy the Zern instead and get away. And so I'd have the Gangland Base Command escape, but with Ethos and Zornum and Hadam dead, who would be in command? You know, all these little pieces as to how the chapter was originally going to go evolved into what it is now, where it's so different. And it was really hard making it this way. Another thing that really changed that I'm glad you didn't even really comment on, so I'm guessing that's because it was just good, was the scene with Celica and Mia at the base. That was really hard to write. You know why? Because remember Chapter 11? That beginning dialogue? Where you didn't know who was saying what? I copied it, pasted it, and I started trying to have a character say each line. But I realized that it didn't make any sense. Like, some of the words were phrased in such terrible ways that it's like, I need an entire conversation to ever get this question to come up. And why would they be having this gigantic conversation in the middle of this hectic, like, World War II hospital situation, you know? It didn't make any sense. Or World War I, I guess, would be more realistic. And it's just like, that was really hard to do, and in the end I had to rewrite some things. So if you go back and read the opening narration in Chapter 11, that's actually been altered. And originally in Chapter 11 they say, whoa, what happened to her? They were talking about Irina, because Irina gets critically injured. But I had to change it to Janix for what it actually wound up being. It was originally Irina, she was the one who got wounded, not Janix. I mean, Janix did still get wounded, but Irina was the one that the comment was originally towards when it was written. Because in the original version, actually, this is what happened. When Janix's team was all taken out around her by the Skells that surrounded them, in the original version, it was Irina was going to drop in, of course, in her Skell to try to defend Janix. And Janix would escape, but Irina's Skell would be damaged. Actually, Cruz too. Cruz and Irina were going to come in to protect Janix, and they would be critically injured, both of them. Granted, Irina in a much shittier shape, like she was in the story, like missing limbs and all that kind of stuff. And so the original ending, so I guess more like Irina was critically injured and Cruz was seriously injured, but he got them both out of there. And so at the end of the chapter, when Alma's at the door, like trying to think, like, did I do the right thing? Cruz was supposed to come on by, getting out of his room and see her, and she would ask him the question. But of course he doesn't have any context to it, and he doesn't want to ask, what do you mean? Because he sees how damaged, how hurt she is by the decision that she made, that he just sits down next to her and he's with her, and that's how the chapter would have ended originally. But because Cruz wasn't injured, and instead he was responsible for damaging the warship to prevent it from escaping so that EM Zenith cannons could destroy it. Man, Chapter 12 changed, right? Right, yeah. But yeah, those are all just ideas and things that I had in place, and they all changed and they altered. People moved positions, some people weren't hurt, some people were hurt, different situations. But I hope that despite all that, the way that it wound up, and from what you say in your review, that it was worth the wait and the fighting was enticing, and that is... People know me. People like to comment that my fight scenes are amazing, and I don't pretend like they're the greatest fight scenes ever written. But I like to think that they're at least fun, and from both the times that you commented on it, you've said that they were good, you know, this time and for the finale against the Phantom. So, I'm glad. It was 35,000 words, like 20,000 of it was just fighting, so I'm glad you enjoyed that. And I'm also glad you enjoyed the remnants. In the original, like after I decided on Badul's team, I was originally going to kill them all in that chapter. I didn't need them anymore after the chapter would be over. But but I decided to let them live because I realized that they're just much more useful for future scenarios. You know, I can have, with the remnants, you know what I have? An arc villain. So I now actually have a reason to maybe stage some conflicts in future stories, and to have them build up to their ultimate plan, which I know what their ultimate plan is, and it's pretty awesome. So I can't wait to use it. Also, yeah, I don't know. I think that's all that I can say about Chapter 12. So, cool. What do you think about all those alternate situations? I don't know if there's any more cool stuff. There probably is. Originally, this video was just supposed to be talking about what ifs in terms of Chapter 12. But I was supposed to record this a while back, but I was waiting to see if anyone else would review Chapter 12, and then no one ever did, and then I published 13, then you reviewed 13, so I guess now it's time to talk about the review on Chapter 13. So, we have the latest review on the latest chapter, and that'll be the last thing that we talk about this video. Yay. So here we go, Rexora 888's review of Chapter 13, Origin. This was the fun chapter to write. That's an interesting naming method. Usually in such a tight-knit group, team members often call each other by their first name, last name, nicknames. This is the first I've seen where almost everyone calls each other by rank, position, out of camaraderie. Certainly explains a few things, though. And in parentheses, save for romance, concern, off-duty, Captain Hook, and in their frantic defense as they realize they may die. I'm realizing as I read on that this kind of naming thing doesn't last very long from a reader's perspective. I was really torn up about it because originally the characters didn't actually say what their names were until they were back at base after they brought Chris in. Then they would start revealing who everyone's names are. But I felt like that was too long for not having their actual names, so I instead brought it back to when they're disarming their helmets and I'm giving you their descriptions after they kill the Crane officers, the Crane terrorists. And then you get to meet the 3rd Soldier Unit, finally. Granted, I've actually written a short story that features Ty Alistair, Captain Hook, quite a bit too. I love Captain Hook, he's probably my favorite one. He's really entertaining. He just has to deal with these people. They give him no respect in that really joking way of calling him Captain Hook instead of Major Hook. If they called him Major Hook, he'd be fine with it, but they refuse to do it. Guess I made the right call in rewatching some Marvel and One Piece recently. Chapters catering to both ends so far. I don't know. I don't read Marvel comics and I don't read One Piece, so I don't know what you're talking about, unfortunately. Sorry. I'm more of a DC guy, honestly. I only watch the Marvel movies. I know that probably looks like this sounds stupid, but it's true. I have read DC comics and I watch a bunch of DC shows and DC movies, but for Marvel, the most experience I have with Marvel, I did watch the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon. Fucking awesome cartoon. Or maybe not so much. What did I do? When I read that, I was really confused. I was kind of like worried that I ruined something. I thought Janix hesitated because she had some code of honor that prevented her from hurting women. But no, she just had really good powers of observation and realized she couldn't fire on a civilian, even if said civilian was trying to save a WMD. A highly defective one, but Janix didn't know that at the time. Yes, it was actually a little of both. She didn't want to hurt the woman, because as you find out while she and Lila are talking, the woman is very attractive, but it was also because something was off. So, it's more of that than the other one, but Janix, you know, she can't be controlled in that respect. I have no control over her. No questions, huh? I guess the Green Pod fiasco was the only time they were misled. I wanted to make that scene longer, where Chris is talking to the 3rd Soldier Unit as a whole, and I ended up adding that little bit where they discuss, like, what are you gonna do now? But I didn't think to have them question her. I don't know why. It just, like, in my head, that's because in my head I know a lot of backstory for this scenario based on something else that I wrote that I won't share for a while. And then it was like, they could, yeah, they should question her, right? I guess the assumption I was making in my head was they questioned her off screen and cleared everything up. Or that it was obvious from them talking about the oversight boards that Chris was an innocent non-combatant, that they shouldn't have attacked at all. But I think you're right. I think I should put some questioning in there. See, this is another thing, just like this is what I was talking about before. In addition to thinking about adding in that Gajarg scene, I was thinking about adding more to this talk with Chris, and it just never came up. So, I don't know. But maybe in the... Maybe Maybe I should. Because by all accounts and purpose, they're letting someone who developed a WMD just walk because they were told that they couldn't kill her. Or that because they weren't supposed to kill her. Anyway. It's a lot of weird stuff there. I probably should have written something more there. Jeez. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Of course they would question her. Fucking... But I guess, once again, I will say the running assumption, I guess, in my own head of my own story was that they did it off screen and everything checked out. So that's what Skells' reminder of, huh? Don't make a girl a promise you can't keep. Which girl? Oh. Because there was a lot shown off in this chapter for Janix's past and everything, and all the promises and the people that she cares about. Definitely doesn't sound like an order Nagi would give, at least not willingly. Janix must have figured at least that much out. Probably figured out it was Elma sometime after waking up, or during some kind of chance encounter beforehand. From her, like, the way that she's thinking about it, she's like, Nagi wouldn't give that order. That's what everyone else is saying. And they're like, and there's no one who would give an order like this on board. There's no one else capable of ordering them around except Nagi, and he wouldn't. And in Janix's head, she knows about Elma. Everybody knows about Elma. She's renowned in that way, and so she just feels like maybe it was her, but she doesn't tell anybody because at the same time everybody knows about Elma. The general populace has a very high approval rate of Elma. So, not just for the oversight members who know that she's a xenoform, but for the public who sees that she's a war hero. Will this be a memory that surfaces up, I wonder? Either way, life has a funny way of connecting dots. Hearts shall be connected in invisible ties and all that. I love that scene. Originally, I actually thought of, that was Cruz and Lila talking, I believe that you're talking about. I would have loved if Cruz met Janix too. And I was planning on doing that until I realized that, yeah, Cruz lost his memory, so he'd forget that he knew Janix before, but Janix wouldn't lose her memory of Cruz. You know? So, if I was to go that angle, I would have to go back to Janix and rewrite it, that at the very least Janix would recognize him. So I didn't. And also, it sounds silly to think about that Janix, Lila, and Cruz were on the White Whale for 2 years, and they only ever passed by each other once, and it was only Lila and Cruz. But I imagine the ship is massive, like the kind of like big Star Wars ships that actually have conveyor belts and trains inside of them to get from one end to the other. And also they have their own segmented places that they need to do, with Janix and Lila having to protect the perimeter, and Cruz having to help construct the habitat units. It's not like they have a lot of time to chat. I don't know. Then again, no one ever knew it was only going to be a 2-year voyage. I guess that makes sense that Ganglion Skells wouldn't remind her of broken promises and more of the ghosts. But is that all she sees when she looks at a Skell, I wonder. Yeah, I never really thought about that. Like, what is it that she sees? Just always assumed that because she saw the ghosts Skells rip up and kill everybody, that would just make it so that all she sees and thinks about when she sees the Skell is them ripping up and killing everybody, including her. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there's actually more I can pull from there. And that would explain why the doctors don't think very much of Janix. Must have been nearly as terrifying for Celica and Mia, though, seeing their friend like this. Yeah, definitely, because she knows both of them. That was actually a really fun scene to write, just the idea of it, that like the Skell is coming at her and she's trying to fight it, but she can't because something's holding her back, and all of a sudden it pops back into reality from the restraints on her, and she's able to break out of them, and she's in the panic mode, and she starts beating the shit out of everybody, including Benton. Because, go back and read Chapter 7, Return, to when Janix first meets Benton. Read that scene with the knowledge of Phantom, and you're like, what the fuck happened to Benton that he turned to such an asshole? Because he's such an accommodating, nice fellow in Chapter 7, and that's what actually bugged me about writing him in Phantom the way that I did. I certainly hope that this makes it clearer, starts making it clearer as to how they got to where they are in Phantom, where they can't stand each other. Because she really beat the shit out of him. She punched him a few times, just blow to the gut, and then threw him into another of his workers. Yeah. So, yeah, writing Janix's escape attempt was a lot of fun. I had a really good fun time with that chapter. See her beating on the metal door and throwing it off its hinges. She did not want to be there. I really like this chapter more than I like Mission, though for different reasons than why I like Mission. The amount of world building here is satisfying, and seeing the mysteries behind Janix's emotions unraveled more so. Seeing the third soldier unit acting like a family of sorts, like that, it really made me feel for them when Janix, when they went on to become martyrs. Okay, it really made me feel for them and for Janix when they went on to become martyrs. Sorry, I think it's because of how close knit they were that I latched onto them. So, but not really so much of the fallen 5th Division during the mission, or Team Expendable, as I do morbidly call them in case I got the number wrong. You were right, it was Division 5. For the amount of jumps in time and scenery, they still felt solidly put together, especially the end narration, as we fast forward to mission and the aftermath regarding Janix. So, yeah, Team Expendable, if I was a better writer, I would have incorporated Bill's, Herman, and Tyler's training and their time with Janix more into the story. Maybe had some time where they were like around the campfire or something like that in a middle Wonder training session, have the three of them talk about like what they did on Earth and what they hope to do later after they complete the mission. I probably should have included more scenes like that so that when they died, it was a little bit more meaningful. I feel like there was a bit more to Bill's because he had an attachment to Janix, not just romantically, but that he really was impressed by her and inspired by her. But I definitely think I could have done more with them, but I just, like, between the fact that the story is ultimately about Janix and Alexa getting together, it's amazing how much stuff there is in the way and how little Janix-Alexa their interaction that there was in Mission and Origin, which is none in Origin. Hell, there was more Gabuid-Alexa interaction, I think, in Mission than there was Janix-Alexa. But yeah, I'm so glad that you love the third soldier unit. I love them. Like, from the moment I created them, and I started talking about them on the Discord and developing them on Tumblr, it sucks that I created all these characters who are already dead. So they exist in the past, all of them. Kumon, Tai, Sagittarius, Alto, Aaron, Lila, they're all dead already, and it's sad. But they're a cool bunch of dudes, and I love them. So I hope to use them more in flashbacks and other story purposes later. It also provides some good insight to Elma's feelings at the end of the previous chapter, especially when you factor in a certain Sung martyr who wasn't part of the martyrs, but who was close to Elma's heart. It makes you wonder if Mill's school of thinking, and justifies the means and needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, means the same as it starts to hit closer to home each time. Although we have seen her throw that line of thinking aside when it gets personal, as a certain deceased demise Ictus would attest to if it weren't well deceased. I had to read that like 5 times to understand what the hell you were talking about. No offense to your writing, not at all. You're perfectly clear. It's just that I'm dumb. So it took me a while to kind of point that out. But from what I gather, you're talking about the Sung martyr would be the unnamed hero who was with Elma in the tandem areas. Because I think from what I read on a post somewhere that you can read from some short stories about Xenoblade X, which I hate that kind of residual information. I want the information necessary to be in the game. It bugs me when you have to go looking for it. But from what I could understand, it seems like Elma and him were fighting in the not Prague areas, in the tandem areas in the Habitat unit against ghosts, and they ended up throwing themselves out of the Habitat unit into space, where for some reason the Ares lost its functionality, and so he ejected Elma from the Ares and threw her back into the residential district and just floated off into space, and everyone assumes that he's dead now. That guy. I don't know if that's all true, but I read that on Tumblr as that being what absolutely did happen at some point. Because the game tells you that it doesn't say that an unknown hero attacked the ghosts on his own. Like, an unnamed hero went out to meet the offensive. But then you find out that Elma was one of the first responders to fight. Like, that Skell that went out before all the rest, that was her. But then you find that it was a tandem Ares, which means there was no lone hero. There were 2 of them in one Ares. So is the Ares the lone hero? Just the wording about it, but I guess maybe they kind of wanted to keep it a secret that there's a Skell capable of having 2 people in it. I don't know. Once again, the lore of the game is so thin in terms of what they tell you in-game that it becomes a little confusing. But then it took me a while to remember that the demise of Ictus is what killed Janix's team. Elma's team. Janix's team is dead too, but so was Elma's before. She's like so Elma's team was taken out by the demise of Ictus, and that's true. That was a much more personal moment for Elma, definitely, in the story. It's like that and her fighting Goetia the second time was very personal. As for nitpicking, only one point here, and it's the nittiest of picks. A race of sentient dark matter creatures, the ghosts were a fearsome four. It was supposed to be force. Missing comma aside, it all boiled down to one missed stroke and F7 not seeing anything wrong because 4 is spelled correctly, and I don't think it checks for hanging prepositions. Nope, grammar check is dumb. Alternatively, the idea that the ghosts being made up of only 4 and causing as much death and destruction as they did is even more terrifying. Yeah, from what I originally envisioned of the ghost fight against over the white whale was that the ghosts won. But from what I was later able to put together based off what I read from in-game, the ghosts were driven off. They were beaten. Until I realized that they weren't. The ghosts left because they shot down the white whale. They accomplished their task. So yeah, for I think the characters in-game, they determined that, yeah, Elma and her team were the ones who were able to force the ghosts away, which is what Tika actually says, I believe, at one point if you ask her about it. I'm pretty sure it's her. LX's boss, she talks about it, how they were all forced to escape thanks to Elma because she has like such a tight bond with her Skell. She's able to just perform at such a level that seldom other people can do. The same with Irina. So they were able to drive them off, but I think it was more that they only wanted to shoot the humans down to specifically force them to crash on Mira, which I think is believable as well. So I'm going to talk about finally the thing that I've actually just noticed I've been avoiding this whole time. Because you didn't mention it in your reviews. Did you know Janix was married? Like, I'm not saying like that you should have put in a comment like, oh my god, that's a huge plot twist, but I'm just surprised that it's not in either of your reviews at all. I guess you had to hit on more of the important stuff. I don't know. Or that it wasn't really something you felt you should hit on. But yeah, a big reveal of Chapter 12 was finally learning who that other woman in all the photos is. And everything, and her name is Lila Copeland, and she's Janix's wife. Originally, she was only supposed to be Janix's girlfriend, but at some point, I decided, you know what? Nah, wife. I just decided sometime between when I originally envisioned her and now that she was her wife. And I really do like that she had existed, and there was a time when Janix was truly happy. Despite all the shit that's happening to her constantly in this story. And it's quite a thing. Yeah, and so I find it interesting you didn't talk about that at all. But at the same time, that's fine. Once again, it's your reviews. You talk about what you want to in your reviews. And Janix's wife. She's married. Was married, unfortunately. And also, that's where Anything for You originated from. Which is what she says to Alexa all the time now. Originally she said it to her wife all the time. That was the last thing that she said to her wife. And also, Chapter 13 reveals something else, that Janix has a sister. A blood sister, which was actually never going to be there. Originally, Chapter 13 was just supposed to be about the 3rd Soldier Unit. It was going to start in the Lawless sectors. But I added in those 3 scenes of her with her sister, her younger sister, simply because I'm currently working with someone else into developing this sibling relationship between Janix and another character. And it is the best. I've been having so much fun just talking to her and putting these characters together, and it just makes me so joyful. So, yeah. I love that. I do love it. And if you're worried about maybe it seeming a little out of the blue, I do have some things to fix that. But for Janix's wife, it was already, you could tell that she didn't want to talk about it the whole time. Whereas for Janix's sister, there's a slightly different reason for that. Regardless, I enjoy talking to. Those were fun things that I like to do in ways that I developed Janix that I never intended to. But I love that they're there. And Chapter 13 was a blast to write, and I'm really glad that you like it. Believe it or not, the scene that most worried me was them charging out to fight, because you know ahead of time that they're all gonna die. But shit, are those spoilers? Fuck. Never mind. Anyway, regardless, what I was saying was that I was worried that the scene where they all died wouldn't carry the weight that it should. And I didn't think that it was as emotional as it could have been. But I think I did it well with the Blood Brothers going out the way that they did. that's the way that they've always been. With Aaron and Ty, unfortunately, ended up becoming the will they, won't they of the 3rd Soldier unit, and unfortunately the answer was won't they. I don't have anything else to say. I don't want to stretch this out anymore, but I just want to say once again that I'm glad whoever's still reading this story, whether if you're not watching these videos or anything, that you're still reading it, and the 4-month break didn't dissuade you from continuing. I'm sorry again about that. I really didn't mean it to be 4 months. But look at my other stories that have been on hold for a year. It's actually very good that I was able to get back to this one within 4 months. I will tell you right now that chapter 14 is titled Fallout, and I have finished it. I just need to revisit it and maybe edit some scenes, change some dialogue, but it's done, so you'll see it in 6 days again. So that puts it on Friday. And chapter 15, I am currently writing it and having a hard time. Not extremely hard, it's just that I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to use that chapter for. I think I have some good ideas though. And finally, chapters 16 and 17, especially 16, have a lot of really good stuff to put in them to help them come along, and I think. But once again, like I said, the upper limit for this story is 18, and I don't know if I'll actually make it there. It really depends on how 15 and 17 come out, depending on how long it goes. But 18 is definitely the end, so 18 is looking to be the end right now. If it changes, I'll let you know. But once Skells Love is done, it's going to be rapid fire, because I got so many other stories on the way that the Chris and Janix universe of stories is getting bigger, and there's a lot of cool stuff that's coming in the future, I think, anyway. So I will say that after I finish Skells Love, I'm going to finally get out that one-shot called Y that I've had just sitting on my computer for forever, because you need context from Skells Love to have it make more sense. And after that, we'll be taking some more important trips around Mira and stuff like that, and some other quote-unquote intrigue in NLA and stuff, and I don't know. I got cool shit planned. I really hope it all comes out interesting, and I hope that all the stories are good. But regardless, that'll happen when it happens. For everybody reading Skells Love and leaving reviews, and Rexor888 writing essays, I swear, you can put all your reviews together and it just, oh my gosh, man, you've written a lot. So, thank you, everybody, and Skells Love is going to continue, of course, right up until the end, and hope you're all excited for that. I want to keep it interesting, I want to make it good. Anyway, until next time, Asa.